afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time of day you happen to be watching this. Today is Tuesday, September the 4th. I am sitting in my little stitching spot with a pile of stuff to the left of me. I don't have a lot of room here in my little stitching spot. Tuesday afternoon, I'm in my loungewear from Soma because I wasn't planning to do a video today, and then thought, hey, you know, no time like the present, right? Let's see what's going on around here. Brian is doing his fantasy football draft after work today, so he's not planning to be home until 7 or 8 o'clock. And so I'm at home. I had a ton of errands to run this morning, and then I had a hair appointment. And my plan was, I worked first, and kind of busy morning with work, and then my hair appointment was at 10:45, and so my plan was that if it stopped raining, so we've had a lot of rain. I love it, don't get me wrong, but we have had a lot of rain. We had 3.5 inches of rainfall just last night, or just probably from yesterday afternoon through the night. And I don't know how much more we have today, and then it stopped for now, but it's supposed to be raining again later. And so, as I've kind of mentioned, reflection stitching and framing and stitching is on the other side of town for me, and I was going to go one day last week and wasn't able to go because of work, and then not feeling the best, and then rain, and it was just kind of one thing after another. And so my plan was, I had a hair appointment today, and it really did look so much better than this, but I was out in the rain. So I had a hair appointment, and my thought was, well, if it's not raining when I leave my hair appointment, then I'll run over to Reflections and, you know, get a few things done. And as luck would have it, I had probably been standing there talking to Julie for all of 10 minutes, and the rain came down. So what that kind of created for me was an opportunity to do a little bit of shopping that I probably didn't really need to do. And I didn't do a whole lot, but I did do some shopping. So the whole reason that I went is I showed you this last week. Anyway, I found this. This is a Cottage Garden Peace on Earth sampler. And I've never done anything by Cottage Garden before, and I didn't even really look at the chart when before I got it out to start stitching on it this afternoon. And the chart is a really, really lovely chart. It's big and clear. It's in color, which I'm usually not a huge fan of charts that are in color, but it's very subtle, so really, really like it. So anyway, my plan was to go out to Reflections today and pick up my 8th in the Farmhouse Christmas series, and to kit this up. So I ordered the chart from 123 Stitch, but I wanted to kit it up from Julie. It calls for all Gentle Arts threads and just some really, really beautiful threads. So I did. Now, of course, I was stitching it before I started filming, so of course now I have to find it. My lighting is terrible again today. It's shiny and bright behind me, even though it's cloudy outside, and it's kind of dim right here where I am, but I tried turning the light on and it really doesn't help. It's too bright. Anyway, kitted this up. We put this on a piece of, this is a piece of 32 count doubloon, and I told Julie it calls for 36 count. I told Julie I really didn't want to do this in a 36 count. So she found a piece of doubloon that we really liked and thought that it would work very well for this, but I'm still going to go ahead and stitch it 1/1. So it's not something I've really ever done before, 1/1 on 30, or I'm sorry, not 1/1. I'm sorry, 1/2 on 32 count. So here's my little start just from this afternoon. The poinsettias are done in Antique Rose by Gentle Arts, and I think those are so beautiful. Now, the green is actually done in Piney Woods, and it's actually at least this dye lot is a lot darker than what's showing up in the picture, but you know what, it's okay. I'm going to leave it. This is a sampler. I feel like it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly the way the picture looks. So I love this. I think this is so beautiful, and it's Merry Monday, so I felt like stitching something Christmassy. So, okay, that's that. Then the rain came down, and it started to rain, and it was really just pouring. So I started looking around, and oh my gosh, I saw a couple of patterns that were, I saw a long dog sampler pattern that, boy, I really thought about buying, but I restrained myself, and I did fine. I did buy an ornament, which I don't know if I brought over here. But then I came across this, and 2 years ago when I found, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, when I first found Julie at Reflections and discovered that there was a shop on 72nd in Omaha, I think my very first visit there, I found the Plum Street Sampler, his and her Thanksgiving stockings, and I stitched them up almost immediately. I'm pretty sure I went in the fall, and I had them stitched up by Thanksgiving, and I wish I put them up. I put up my fall decorations this weekend, and although those are more Thanksgiving-y, and I try not to put anything that's really truly Thanksgiving-y up, I put those up because they're just too pretty not to have up for at least a couple months out of the year. Anyway, I stitched them up, and I loved them, but they were tiny, and I probably stitched them on 36 count. I'm sure it called for 36 count, and I probably stitched them on 36 count, and they were awfully small, and my only thought was I wish I had done them on a larger count and done them a little bit bigger. Well, I came across this afternoon, and I don't think this is new, but honestly, I have never seen this before, and you know, it's a Plum Street sampler, and you're not going to be surprised. It's called Olga's Autumn Stocking. And that cat, you know, I like cats. We have 2 cats, but cats don't usually get me. Like, I'm not drawn to cats as far as stitching goes, but there is something about that cat on that checkered pumpkin that I thought was absolutely to die for. So I had to get this, and this also calls for 36 count, stitching at 1/1. There are 18 different thread colors in this, mostly Gentle Arts in a few weeks, and that's unusual. Usually Paulette's designs are, you know, maybe like more like 8 or 10 thread colors, but this one has 18, and I pulled them all. And we realized that the first fabric that we had picked didn't quite work, and so we settled on a piece of, at first we were looking at 36 count, and Julie said that's going to end up being like 20 inches long or 21 inches long by like 8 inches wide or whatever. And I said, okay, well, what would it be on 36 count? And so then that ends up being like 17 inches long by, I don't know, whatever, 6 or whatever. You know, so it's still kind of the size of a regular stocking, which I think would be, you know, I think is fine. So we ended up putting this on a piece of linen mink, and it is 36 count, and it's just a really good, as Julie said, it's just a nice neutral, This is coming through a little bit grayer than it really is, but it doesn't have, you know, it doesn't have a rose tint to it. It doesn't have a gold tint to it. It's just a nice neutral. And there is a fair amount of oatmeal in this, and you can barely see it. It's a lot of the stars are done in oatmeal, and you can barely see them. So I think the oatmeal will show up nicely on this, you know, on this piece of, okay, I was looking at my time there, on that piece of fabric. So those are 2 new starts. And then I haven't done a lot of stitching on any one thing, but I have done a fair amount of stitching on a whole bunch of different things. And I thought my next week is going to be kind of a little bit busy and a little bit crazy, and I thought I may not have time to film, so I wanted to kind of show you just sort of what I've been working on. The first thing is, I worked on this on Witchy Wednesday, I'm pretty sure, and it is the Halloween Rules wear a costume. And actually what I finished on this was a good portion of the banner, which is a free chart that you can find online through the Lizzie Kate website. So prior to last week, I had the Halloween in there, but I didn't have rules wasn't finished and the tree wasn't finished. And then I didn't have any of wear a costume in, the little dog or the little, you know, his little mask or the words. And so I worked on that Witchy Wednesday. I worked on this and had a recommendation from Miss Pam at Stitching Between the Lines to take a look at that show on Netflix called The Staircase. And it's a show about the murder of Kathleen, or well, the death of Kathleen Peterson and the subsequent arrest of her husband Michael, and kind of all that happened with that. And it is absolutely fascinating. So I worked on that, and I will always think about The Staircase when I look at Halloween rules. And then I started on, actually, these are in no particular order. I did get a little bit of a start on Silent Night. No, I'm sorry, on Silver Bells. This is a hands-on design. And speaking of hands-on design, Kathy Haberman. I'll get to this in a second, but I went to, we had to take some things up to Maddie up at Augustana, which is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And on our way home, we stopped in Beresford, South Dakota, which is 30 miles south, and stopped into Shanty Stitchers. And as I'm there getting ready to check out with quite a few things, if you're friends with me on Instagram, you saw all the stuff that I bought there. Mostly quilting. But I heard Ginny, the proprietor of Shanty Stitchers, talk to a lady who had just walked in with her husband and say, "I'll be with you in a minute, Kathy." And, you know, my name's Ka5leens, so of course I turned to see who this other Kathy person was, and it was none other than the fabulous Kathy Haberman. And I actually had this piece of linen, Weeks Dye Works chalkboard linen, sitting on my pile. And Kathy, after I kind of made a fool of myself and said, "Are you the Kathy?" And she said, you know, laughed and said, "Yes, I am." And we had a good chuckle, and just lovely and gracious. And her husband was just a sweetheart. She said, "Oh, that's my favorite piece of fabric right there that you have." And I said, "Well, I'm buying this to stitch your design." So that was funny. And we had a lovely chat and just really enjoyed. So I got a little bit of a start on Silver Bells. And not much, but a little bit, Saturday afternoon when we got home. So that was kind of nice. I also, then Sunday morning, for Santa's Sunday, it was, you know, it's a 6-hour drive if you do it in one day. And so we did drive up and drive back, and it kind of wore us out, I have to say. It kind of wore us out. We ended up not going to church on Sunday morning, and instead got up and worked on Sugar Stitch's Cross Stitch Kris Kringle's Hot Cocoa, which looks like this. This is the chart that I bought online a couple weeks or so ago, and I actually got a fair amount of this finished up. So here is Hot Cocoa. And then the holes here are actually, and I didn't realize this, done in Mill Hill beads, red and green Mill Hill beads, so I have to get those. But the other thing I didn't notice is Hot Cocoa down here and Kringles up here are stitch 1/1 tent stitch. So I got to start on those, and then just frankly got really tired of that, and so put that away for a little bit. But got, you know, got a fair amount done, and this will be Maddie's ornament. This will be Maddie's Christmas ornament. So, you know, if I get this done in the next week or so, I'm not too far behind as far as ornaments go. Okay, I'm already over 15 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and pause here and start a new video, and then do some editing and see if I can kind of edit out some of this and go from there.